the ban list is here. Not only that, we have some rule changes, which we're going to get into. It clears up some stuff, for sure. It makes it better, I guess, less confusing. We'll get into it. Man, it's been such a long week for me. I've been working 12 hours, days off canceled. Today I was supposed to work, but then I got to work and they're like, you know what? You don't have to work anymore. Just go back. The DNC's over. So I'm like, okay, 40-minute drive, and I got to do a 40-minute back, and here we go. All at the same time, I'm trying to read the ban list and trying to see what the hell's going on. Let's get into it. I'm not going to take too long on the ban list because I'm sure by now you already know. But the Ukumon, the one that got hit was the promo one, and here it just talks about because it increases the speed of control decks, right? You get the memory, and then you hatch. I don't use them that much. I'm not really big fans of Ukumons. Like, I get it, they're good, they can help decks, but it kind of makes things unfair because then meta decks could just use it and become uber meta. I actually thought the other Ukumon was going to get hit because it's a searcher, but hey, I guess this is used with Ancient Garurumon, speeding up the process, giving it memory. The other one got hit was also the Louis, and then here as well, it just says, by repeatedly combining effects that aren't once per turn, such as the Mat with this card Onplay effect, the game speed accelerates dramatically, making it difficult for many decks to compete, which is exactly what I was talking about with the Ukumons. This one just threw everyone off. Hammer Spark? I haven't messed around with the Ancient Garurumon yet because I need to buy them, and I'm not going to pay $20 for one copy. I only got one. I'll probably print proxies and start messing around with it, but I'm assuming this is probably the reason why it got hit. But here it just talks about that because decks have a lot of drawing power now, that you can get multiple Hammer Sparks, and Hammer Sparks, you can use all of them if you have them. They're not a once per turn type of thing. Now, maybe what they could have done, they could have made it like a conditional, right? Or like a rule you can only use one per turn, something of the sort. But they just said, nah, we're just going to cut it. Now, this is being restricted to one. So we're going to be seeing a lot of Blinding Rays being played now. Although Blinding Rays, I don't see it ever getting hit. Maybe. Just because it doesn't have a security effect. And, you know, Hammer Spark does. You gain 2 memory. So Hammer Spark was the other one. And then Awakening of the Golden Knights. Not surprising. It's more surprising that this one got hit and not the Magna X. But the Magna X, there's a lot of ways around it now where, you know, it needs... After it digivolves, I mean, if you can stall for that one turn, if you block, then, you know, it really can't trigger its when digivolving effect. But the Awakening of the Golden Knight, just being able to just warp from level 4 armor to Magna for a play cost of 3 as opposed to 5 or 6, crazy. So I could see why this got hit. Still going to be used. I don't think it's really going to do much for the armor deck as far as being slow. I think now you'll see more play of the blue-based, you know, the actual armor form, Magnamon, Numemon X anybody. So people were speculating this one or the Manzimon X, but I think this one, just because it spits out the on deletion, you know, the Numemon from your trash without paying the cost. When using Numemon decks, this card has high board retention from the beginning of the game, and its inherited effect can be reused when combined with other cards, allowing the single card to significantly increase its ability to control the entire deck. In addition, since a level 6 can also be played by its effect, it's easy to digivolve from there to level 7, which has a higher output to create a one-sided control board at an early stage. Yeah, so it's just what I did when I made the deck at first, right? You swing, you delete, you bring out the level 6 Numemon, and now you can just digivolve into a level 7, basically just for the pay cost of the 7. The other one was TK. Not Patamon, but TK. Few thoughts on the TK. TK is crazy, especially when you have a lot of them, because the Angel decks is all about putting stuff in the security, removing it stuff, and then that's when the TK triggers, right? That's kind of the whole thing of it, is just, you know, tap it and you gain a memory. The Patamon, I mean, yeah, I don't know. The TK, I guess, lets you play right? It lets you put a card into the bottom of your security stack, which would help trigger your Patamon next turn when you raise it from the breeding area, which probably makes sense. Why they cut the TK? Because now you're limiting ways on how to put cards easily into your security stack. The Patamon doesn't do that, but it does check your security stack. And if you don't have one, chances are you're only going to have one, maybe two champions. So then you can only do it once, twice. After that, the Patamon's kind of like, well, I got no level 4s anymore. But of course, there's other cards that allow you to put cards on there. Let's see what they say. Having multiples, I just said that, of this card in play makes it easy to continuously and significantly increase memory, guaranteeing stability and yellow vaccine. Exactly. Decks and others that use this card also, this card's role through the entire game becomes significant since the effect which increases or decreases security cards can be activated for a low memory cost. On top of this, having memory gained after recovery effects lets the player do more and makes matches take excessively longer. For these reasons, the card will be limited to 1. So it's exactly what I talked about. We got Gabumon back. It's crazy. Starter deck 6. And this was just so left field. I'm like, what the hell? But it's good for purple because purple has just constantly been getting hit left and right. Rightfully so. I mean, I was talking with one of my friends, and if you have in any TCG, any deck that interacts with the trash, it's gonna be, pretty crazy, pretty wild. It's gonna be a meta deck for the most part. And purple, unfortunately, is that for the TCG. So the Gabumon, it was hit because the one attacking draw 1 trash 1 is now once per turn. And think of the Garurumon, you're able to unsuspend attack continuous amount of times. So in the past game environments when this card was widely used by combining it with the Digimon that had an effect that let it attack consecutively and activating its inherent effect that doesn't have once per turn multiple times and increase the speed and consistency of decks that made use of the trash, which is what I said. However, as the card pool has increased in recent game environments, there are now more ways to suppress attacks. It's true, you have ace cards. Because of this, we have determined that it has become more difficult to consistently activate this card's effect multiple times compared to before, therefore bringing it back to unrestricted. I think it's a good call, but I don't know. Are we going to be seeing Metal Megal coming back? Are we gonna? I mean, it's obviously gonna be splashed again in Belphemon because you are able to unsuspend an attack twice. But I think it's pretty cool. It'll probably put some few decks, purple decks, back on the map, and that's pretty much it for the ban list. It's more or less what everyone expected, just besides that Hammer Spark and that TK, and then bringing back the Gabumon. That's crazy. So now I want to talk about the updates of the rules, and there's quite a bit, which we'll get through it. This video might be a little long, but I promise this information is actually important and pretty good. So first off, they start with revisions for the Quantumon, and I'm going to try and summarize it. I had to read some of this. I had to read it like 3-5 times. I'm like, what the hell did it say? So before card information revision, start your opponent's turn, declare one card category, then reveal the top card of your opponent's deck. If it's not of that category, this Digimon isn't affected by that category's effects for the turn. Turn the reveal cards to the top or bottom of their opponent's deck. Now the difference here is they added on here other than this Digimon's effect, and up here they talk about because then technically his own effects or her own effects don't work on her. So that's pretty much it for that one. Then regarding the XX of this card, Digimon is also treated as YY. So for example, Leomon X anybody also treated as Leomon. Old text. The XX of this card Digimon is also treated as YY. New text, now it's a rule. So the Thundermon is revised shown as text below. So the Thundermon says considered as Mamimon as well. But the way that it's worded, it's an effect. So because of that, that means if it's in the trash or the breeding area, which I didn't know until I was reading this, it doesn't count as a Mamimon. So for example, the Garamon for the Numemon players, if you have a Garamon in the breeding area, you can't digivolve into Numemon X because that effect doesn't treat it as a Numemon right there. You have to move it up, and now it's treated as a Numemon. and now you can Digivolve on top of it. But now what they're doing is they're treating it as a rule, so now it's going to count towards the breeding area and the trash. So this works really well. So my Sakuyamon deck profile, I did talk about how the Yokomon, the other Cubimon version, is in the trash. You're able to use it for warping. This is what it's talking about. Essentially, it wouldn't work because it's an effect, not a rule. A rule is always there no matter where the card is. So that's the best explanation I can give you guys, and that's what all this is kind of explaining. So they're also doing it with think of Eosmon, not Snatchmon, what's his name? Venmon. So now where it says you can include up to X amount of copies, that's an effect. They're gonna do it as a rule. That's it. So that's it for that part. And let's look at the card changes with the rule, which I saw one, and I want to know what you guys think. So Thundermon, we already talked about it. Rule also treated as Mamemon. We got Skull Knightmon Cavalier. All the Skull Knightmons basically. Shoutmons. So this is interesting. How are these decks gonna change? And the reason I want to bring this up, see, I talked about the Garamon. The Megidramons, now if they're in the trash or the breeding area, they're considered Chaos Gallantmons. See, here's the Yokomon, as I was saying, is also treated as Cubimon in the trash. So, where is it? Where are you? I'm going to scroll through these because we're going to be here all day. Raremon. So Raremon with the trait, once it's in the trash or in the breeding area, it's still considered Cyborg. The Panyamon X Antibody. Treat this card Digimon as if it also has Leomon in its name. Close brackets. The rule, name also treated as having Leomon. Okay, maybe I just cleared that for myself. Now, I was reading something like, okay, well, could we now use it in Leomon decks where like it could Digivolve over Leomons or no? But I don't think so because it says also treated as having Leomon, which would mean it's a Panyamon X Antibody / Leomon in its name. Yeah, but here's the list. You guys can go through it. I'm not gonna see there's a Venmon. I'm not gonna go through it. But now we get into a little more kind of detailed stuff. So now the main area of the game, which is the field, or that's what it's gonna be called now. And I'll leave this up there for you guys to read. But basically, what it's saying is that if a card says the field, it's referring to the breeding area and the battle area as well. The rules on the breeding area and the battle area don't change because of it, but I think it's more of like if a card says, the field, it includes those areas as well. Now, there's a change to the Overflow rule change, which makes better sense. So let's just go here. This is before the rule. When a Digimon with Overflow in the breeding area is trashed, it is moved from the breeding area to the trash. Therefore, Overflow isn't processed, which is weird. So because it wasn't considered part of the field, if you have, I don't know, who's a ace. Let's say you got a Zuromon ace, and I don't even know how it would get deleted. The only thing I'm thinking is like Davis, but I don't know. I'm not really a Davos player like that. But let's say a Davo, you played it, you're able to, or even Belphemon where you delete a Digimon, you're in the breeding area, but I think it's your Digitamon. Anyway, if it ends up getting deleted in the breeding area and it goes to the trash and it's an ace card, you would not lose the Overflow because it's not considered its effects, or it's not considered being on the field. But now they're changing it to now where it is. So if you do have a Digimon with Overflow in the breeding area and somehow it gets deleted, you lose that Overflow. So that's the change with the Overflow. Now this makes me wonder, I don't know if there's cards, or maybe now there's going to be cards later on where you're going to be able to pop your opponent's Digimon in the breeding area. That'd be crazy. That would be crazy. And then simultaneously triggering with the rule checks. This one took me a while, but here we go. In this situation, we're gonna use Flame House Scythe. So if you don't know what Flame House Scythe does, it reduces a Digimon's DP by 6,000, and in this case, then an effect plays a Digimon with an Onplay effect from your trash. So before the rule change, the undeletion effect is triggered after the rule check and takes priority in the effects to be resolved. So what this means is you play the Flame House Scythe. Let's say there's a Goonimon that has an undeletion. I'll play the Flame on. It deletes it. On deletion kicks in, plays the Flame on, and then you resolve your effect and play your Digimon. Right? This is a new one. The on-play effect and the on-deletion effect trigger simultaneously. How's that gonna make, like, I get it. So you play the Flame House Scythe, delete the Goonimon, at the same time you're playing a Digimon with 6,000 DP or less, and then you're both playing, so play Flame on, and then you play yours from your effect. And now they're the on-plays. I'm assuming it's player turn priority. So if you have a level 4, or if you play a Digimon that would delete that Flame on, that on-play would delete it. But then does the on-play trigger? I think it does. I don't know. But if your on-play is triggering first, then you would delete that one, so it wouldn't play as on-play? This is confusing. One more thing that should not be confusing for you is forgetting if your opponent has effects, or if your Digimon has like no DP, right? So check out my counters at the Etsy shop. Link will be down below. But yeah, if you guys get that, let me know. Now the counter timing is the other thing. So in previous versions of the rules, the counter timing used the following procedure. The non-turn players, when an opponent's Digimon attacks, effects trigger. Step 2, the non-player's turn counter effects trigger. However, in such situations, only when an opponent's Digimon attacks, effects will trigger at timings different from the timing shown on cards. This resulted in hindrance in gameplay and required players to know in advance that only when an opponent's Digimon attacks, effects will trigger at different timings. This has now been changed so that when an opponent's Digimon attacks, effects will trigger simultaneously with effects such as when attacking Digimon's when attacking effect, and when an opponent's Digimon is suspended effects. The rules for counter effects will remain unchanged. You see how like confusing this crap is? Like they couldn't just put pictures and just arrows like if this happens and that happens, and we'll get through it. But what I'm getting at is if your opponent has an effect that says when an opponent's Digimon attacks and you have a when attacking, they both trigger at the same time. That's what I'm getting out of this. So we'll actually get through it. There are and then text rules. Include traits unless trait was written. Effects with XX in their text can now reference text written on cards, including names, traits, effects, inherits, effects, rules, digivolution requirements, DNA, digicross requirements, and burst. In the previous versions of the rules, it didn't include traits unless a trait was written in the text for an effect or rule, resulting in situations where it would be difficult to determine if a trait would be referenced or not. The rules have now been changed so it will be easy to understand what text can be referenced. However, it doesn't include notes on cards. Effects with XX in their text can now reference text written on cards. This is still a little confusing to me as well, but tokens, moving on. Token cards can't be included in a deck or Digiect deck, which I think all of us knew that. Token cards must be cards that can show their display format unsuspended, suspended. I think this kind of goes like, well, you can't use circles because then how do you know it's suspended? Something like that. When using token cards, you don't have to declare the effect to be used with the token in advance. The card information specified in effect doesn't have to be written on a token card, even if the information is written on a token card. It is considered to be a card with card information given to it by an effect. Token cards can now be prepared even if your deck doesn't have any cards that use tokens. I don't know why that matters. In addition, the rules for tokens used in the game have been changed. Here we go. The number of tokens is always public information. Tokens can't digivolve. Cards can't be placed under tokens. When a token is removed from the field, it is removed from the game instead of being placed in a different area. So I think that's important because if you have decks that utilize how many cards you have in the trash, the tokens aren't going to count. The rule stating that tokens can't digivolve and some other rules remain unchanged, but one change will be included. A token will be removed from the game when it leaves the field. Yeah, okay. When an effect such as Arrest Digimon's Periodmon's effect will be used to place a token under another Digimon or Tamer, the token is removed from the game instead. Okay. I mean, tokens don't even have inherits anyway, but there might be Digimon that said, you know, for each card in this Digivolution stack, you know, you get Security Attack Plus or something. So that's probably why they're doing that. So that's it. Now let's look at the Cliff Notes that someone shared. Let's give them a shout out. Yari actually tagged everyone in the group if you are in the group. So this is basically the Cliff Notes version of everything that I just went. The field, the wording of Overflow, effects, triggers, and rule changes. And we're just gonna see. So here we go. Now they actually got like, you know, pictures here, which is better. And I'm not gonna go through these. It's just more if you want to take screenshots if you're not on Facebook for whatever reason. But see, and then the effects are now going to be turned into rules. I think that's pretty cool. And I think people played that way, but then if you're in like tournaments and you know they're sticklers on that, it won't follow through. So now that it's official, no one can say anything. And there we go. Huge day for us. I don't really care about the Ukomon stuff, to be honest with you, or the Louis. The only thing I would care about is that if I wanted to play an actual Ukomon deck, you can't use 8 Ukomons. You can only use 1 and then 4 of the other one. But I mean, you know they're going to release other ones, and they're probably going to limit, or the way the Ukomon is going to be created, it's going to say if you have, you know, a Louis, which would force you to play a Louis in the deck, which could throw off the balance in other decks. Or they might just make it like if you have a white Tamer or if you have another white Digimon, like they're probably going to condense it to where it only works more for Ukomon. Now, what they should have done is that you can't use it outside of its deck, or you can use such and such card together, something like that. I'll catch you guys on the next video.